What happens when a couple of friends deep dive into silly Star Wars thoughts and questions you never knew you needed answered?
Do you think that Shmi and Qui-Gon did the Funky Town dance?
Oh, yeah.
You do?
Oh, yeah. 100% that was her being like, come on, let's go to bed, you know?
She was coming to invite us.
Yeah.
Join us for some casual conversation on the Cantina Chat podcast featuring Jordan and Sean.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody, to episode 13 of the Cantina Chat podcast. Good, fun one here today. We're going to be talking about my favorite movie.
Your favorite, yeah.
We just finished yours not too long ago. Now we're on mine.
Hey, how about
So
that?
that's pretty cool.
We're side by side.
Of course, we hear Mr. Jordan over here. And we also are joined with our producer with us today, the Force Ghost on the Coast, we call her. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, great. Thank you. Of course, I'm your neighborhood Sith. That's what we've always said, sure. Sean.
Yeah. I'm
so,
just Jordan today. Apparently,
just Jordan.
You know?
That's all you.
It's all
That's
right.
all you get to
It's
be.
all right.
All right.
Sometimes
Mine's
being
different too. So
being a Jedi Jester gets a little tough sometimes, buddy. You know.
could you imagine like a Jedi, but you have like that? You can't put your robe up because you've got like a jester hat.
It would be. I don't know. I don't think I could do it.
That's how I've been
First
imagining
couple days
you
be
this whole
fine.
time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
You're wearing like that hat with the little bells on the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jingle, jingle,
It's called
jingle.
a jester hat.
I know what it is.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I figure I'll toss it over to you. Do you have anything that like? I know that in this original trilogy, we'll obviously be talking about A New Hope today, the first one, movie that started everything, the
Yeah,
very
it's the
first
beginning
one.
of the franchise.
You, in terms of the prequels, Episode 3 was your all-time favorite.
Yes.
In the original trilogy only, 4, 5, and 6, where does this one stack up in your opinion?
That's
you hate rankings, I know.
I really do. Well, my favorite out of the originals is Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, that's the. I think that's the right answer. That's everyone's answer except for me, I think.
Yeah. I think it would. I don't know. I really don't know. I've never thought about ranking like just the like the prequel, the original, whatever.
Right.
Like it's hard for me to rank them. I think Empire Strikes Back would be number 1, and then A New Hope, and Episode 6 would be. It's on neck to neck. I don't know. Like that's tough for me to always do that. But.
I put them pretty close too, but I think I know that you have a really strong soft spot for like the Clone Wars and all that, but to me, this is it. This
Right.
original trilogy is like it's the thing that got me into Star Wars. It got me hyped beyond all belief. As a kid,
Right.
you're relating to Luke, and all that. You're at that same age, and all the adventurous spirit and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Everything about this era to me was also like when George Lucas. It's like prime Star Wars. It's what Star Wars was supposed to
Yeah.
be. So like to me, I liked that. It was a much more straightforward time period in terms of like the story and everything versus where it's at now. It was so much more black and white in terms of just like it's good fighting evil.
Right.
Like George Lucas said that the dark side of the Force was likened to like a cancer. It was an unnatural. It was evil.
Right.
It was the light side of the Force is good. There was no gray area. There was no it depends on you. It depends
Right.
on how you use it. None of that stuff that is so common nowadays. But like back then, everything was just very straightforward. It was
Right.
very like these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, go. And it
Right.
was like such a different time period. The Force was a lot more like spiritual and mystical, and there was like midichlorians didn't exist,
Right.
that sort of thing. So like to me, this feels like what it was supposed to be,
Right.
even though it's so old. But I feel like the way they made all the props and they made everything, a lot of this stuff stands up still today,
Yeah.
really, really good.
Well, that's what I was going to say too. Is that if you just going through and rewatching the originals, even after they do like the extra releases and stuff like that, they put a little bit more CGI into it. As
Yeah.
years went on, so on and so forth. But even the stuff that isn't CGI and that hasn't been added and all this stuff, it still looks good
Yeah,
compared to today's movies. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like it stands up just fine. It'll run neck to neck with a bunch of them. I've seen movies that come out now that are horrible. Like, CGI is bad, whatever.
yeah,
And it's like, that's crazy that, 40 years ago, whatever it was, you know,
Yeah.
it's beating a lot of different movies still.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I think it's interesting because George Lucas surrounded himself around like some of the best talent that the industry could ever hope to have during
Right.
that time period. But as far as like the sound design people, the prop people, I mean, they invented ILM for this,
Yeah.
and then like bringing them on board, they invented so many like new kinds of cameras and different techniques
Yeah.
and how to do some of the things they did to make his vision what he wanted.
Right.
I always thought that was just amazing that they had the skill set to do what he wanted to do,
Right.
to be able to tell the story that he had. And that like really speaks to all the people he had around him also being a
Yeah,
big part
yeah.
of it, which is cool. It's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just makes me excited that we're back to that we're in, like what we said, like what started the whole franchise. It's the very first movie.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Yeah, I like the movie itself quite a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you come back to another good opening,
Yeah.
where we have Leia fleeing and you have the
Mhm.
Star Destroyer coming up right behind it. And it's cool to see like the that shows you the size difference between
Yeah.
just the freighter versus a Star Destroyer,
yeah.
where like the freighter flies over and it's like 2 seconds and you're already past it,
Mhm.
and then the Star Destroyer comes in and you're just like, it just keeps coming, it keeps coming, it keeps coming, and you're like, oh, whoa,
True,
I
yeah.
think that's a really cool way to open, especially once again the very first movie.
Yeah.
It's like, that's awesome. And I do like how they kind of kept it like immediately in the opening you have action.
Right.
Right, you have the two ships shooting back and forth between each other. You go on to Leia's ship. You're there. You have R2 and C-3PO were first characters we see.
Yeah.
They're walking through the
hallway of
the
the-
hallway,
Mhm.
and you have all these different rebellion soldiers running through, freaking out, trying to get around to figure out where they need to go.
Right.
And
right.
R2 and C-3PO are like, oh, hi, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
But it's immediate action.
Yeah, for sure.
We see the Empire breach, which is still cool.
Yeah.
Like the sounds and stuff like that. Like you hear the sounds of the docking and all this stuff when they,
Mhm.
dock up to them, whatever. All the rebellion troops are like in the hallway, like in the
Waiting
corridors
for-
and stuff,
yeah.
right? And when they set the charge, like to cut out the door and blow out the door, just the sound effect for that was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We get to see Vader for the first time, basically,
Oh,
as Vader. I mean, back then that would have been if you were in the theaters watching
right,
this thing.
yeah.
This guy comes in, and you immediately know he's the baddest villain.
Well, you have you have stormtroopers who are just blasting people. They get done doing their thing. They're chasing. And another thing that I noticed that I kind of thought was funny was when I was just rewatching the movie and stuff like that. When the stormtroopers first get into the hallway, and all
Right.
the other all the rebels are like running back down the hallway to get away. There was one stormtrooper that stopped at like a door that was on the right, and when he goes over, he like one hand held his pistol and was like pew pew pew, and just started blasting into this doorway.
Yeah.
But like
yeah,
if you
yeah.
look, like the shots, like he has his gun tilted up, so the shots are shooting more upwards. So I'm like, I watched it the other day, and I was like, what was he shooting at? Like, who's in there?
That's so funny.
But it
Yeah.
was just funny, just
I like
the little
that.
thing like that.
So there's a little known, I guess, fact about the stormtroopers' guns that I always thought was really cool.
Okay.
At least way back then when they were filming these back then, their props that they were using were like modified off of these real weapons,
Yeah.
right? And they just put all these little attachments and things
Yeah.
on it. Well, they wanted to have like actual smoke and flash effects come out of the gun so that they could add in the blaster effect later or
Okay.
whatever. But basically, the way the shell cartridge comes out of the gun is on the left side, because it was one gun that they modeled it off of, which was made for a left-handed person. And what happens
Oh.
is when they shoot the gun and they fire it, those shells, even though it's just a flash, they're really, really hot. It ejects them out. And if you're left-handed, they're ejecting out to the left of you. But if you're right-handed and you're holding this thing, it's hitting you.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you pay really close attention, I think it might be that scene only when they're boarding the Tantive.
Yeah.
But all of the stormtroopers are holding the gun like kind of awkwardly. They're holding it with their left hand as if they were shooting it with their left hand, and their right hand is like over the left hand,
Right.
because none of the people were left-handed, so it
Okay.
looks really funny.
Yeah.
It looks like
That's
they're all
cool.
holding their guns like really awkwardly,
Right.
but that's why.
I like
I wonder
that.
if that's why the guy was holding thing with one hand.
He's like kind of like here.
Because the things are like, he's like, ow, ow.
Right. That's funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I knew that they were based off of like real life guns.
Yeah, they
Or
kind of
not
all
based
are.
off of, but like that was the model of the
Right.
blasters and stuff. And I always thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Like I'll see random like weapons and stuff like that, and I'm like, Star Wars. It's really funny how that works.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, when we had
That's a cool-
first introduced to Vader, it was like even like watching it doesn't matter. You've seen it 100 times. When you have all the stormtroopers come in and they start tearing up the rebels and stuff like that, they all run down the corridor. Everything's done, and then you have troopers that are on the side and they like kind of stand up against the wall, and then here comes 7-foot tall Vader just like creeping through the doorway.
Yeah.
He comes out of the smoke. And it was like, whoa, it still kind of gives you that, like when you were a little kid and you were like, oh gosh,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's pretty cool. I like that. I do like when Vader was walking through the ship, and he was trying to find the rebel plans, and like all of his officers, like after he talked to Leia, and his officers telling him like, this isn't a good idea. Like the Senate, the Senate might, they might feel bad for the rebels or whatever, blah blah blah.
Right.
And Vader was like super snappy with them, but like very direct. I always like that because it just shows that Vader's like, I don't care, like whatever, this is how it's going to go.
Right.
But he's kind of sassy. You know what I mean?
True.
Like he's
True.
very like, I don't know. I thought that was funny too.
So there's something that happens at the beginning of that ship that always makes me laugh so hard every time I see it. But it's like right after Leia puts the message inside of R2, and R2 and C-3PO, they take off. And the stormtroopers come in, and Vader's like, find the consular of this ship, whoever the diplomat is, find them. I want them alive.
Yeah.
And so then the stormtroopers see her in the little hallway, and the stormtrooper says, hey, there's one, set for stun. And then she immediately blasts him in the chest and kills him. It's so funny. But like, it makes me laugh because if you think about all of the enhanced editions
Right.
and all these different things they've come out with, there's the famous Han shot first scene.
Yeah.
Because Lucas didn't like the idea that Han would be evil and would like shoot Greedo before Greedo shot him.
Right.
So he tweaked that
They changed
scene.
it,
So
yeah.
then people complained, and he was like, "No, Han's not a bad guy." So then they made it like they shoot
shot
at the
the
exact same time.
Yeah.
So it was like this whole controversy.
Every
Why did they never
rendition-
do that with Leia? Leia just murders a guy in cold blood
Well,
who was saying he was going to stun her.
yeah, that's true. What I thought, another thing of the exact same scene was the fact that you have all these stormtroopers together, and the guy's like, set for stun, and he gets blasted, and all the other ones were like, meh.
I know.
And
They
then
didn't care
stun
either.
her or whatever,
Yeah.
and I was like, huh.
They didn't even say anything afterwards. They just
No.
stepped over his dead body.
Yeah.
They're like, oh well, Gary's
she'll
gone.
be all right. What about Terry? Nah, don't worry about him.
Oh, well.
I
That's
thought
true.
that was funny too. I was like that.
That's pretty good.
I've always been that like, did they take a minute? Like nothing. They were just like, yeah, we got her.
Oh, well. Gary's gone.
It was funny.
It makes you think that like they're probably pushing each other in the doorways. They're like,
You
just
go
the
first.
scene right before that, they're like, Gary, you should go. You should go first.
There's nobody in here. We already checked.
Go ahead, Gary. Oh, Gary died. Oh.
We got her though. Do you when C-3PO and R2? Actually, I want to talk about Vader first.
Okay.
The coldest scene with Vader when he was
When he's
choking
actually angry and he's choking a guy. yeah.
choking the rebel, trying to figure out where the plans was, and he
Right.
was like, "There's no plans. We don't know what you're talking about." Blah blah blah, and he just
Yeah.
kills him and then drops him. or
He's
throws
holding him
against
up
wall.
in the air with one arm.
His feet are dangling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he gets mad. He just throws him against the wall. He falls down. That was like being a kid. That was like the coldest scene ever. And you
Oh,
were
I
like,
know.
oh, you get that like.
You don't even see him using force powers at this
It's just pure
early
muscle.
stage. He's just choking a guy with his
Yeah.
arms. We now know that's a robot hand.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Force gripping that guy's throat.
So yeah, it was cool. So going to C-3PO and R2 when they board the escape pod.
Mhm,
Remember, because C-3PO didn't want to go in, and R2 was already opened the door, or whatever.
Yeah.
And C-3PO was like, "I'm not going in there." And then a random blaster shot hits above C-3PO, and he was like, "Okay," and
Okay,
he
yeah.
gets in. Were the stormtroopers shooting at C-3PO, or was that just like an oopsie?
No, that was just a ricochet. Remember, there's nobody who has better Imperial precision than a stormtrooper.
That line. And it's been proven wrong ever since.
It's like, wait a minute.
Right? I don't know.
Nobody would shoot this precise. Like, wait,
These blast points are too precise to be sand people.
only a stormtrooper, an Imperial stormtrooper, has this precision.
Yeah,
That's what it says.
yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute.
They
They can't hit nothing.
You're
What stormtroopers is he
We
seeing?
watched him miss a lot.
He's been on this planet a
Everything.
little too long.
Right, he forgot.
hanging
He
out.
has no idea. He hasn't even seen a stormtrooper.
He's only seen clones. He
Right.
doesn't know.
He remembers clones being super precise.
Yeah. And he doesn't realize how far the Empire's gone
Right,
down.
right. But yeah, I always wondered that as if the Empire was shooting at C-3PO or if it was like an accidental shoot, because they shoot and C-3PO's like, oh, okay, and then he gets in the thing, but you don't hear like
Nobody's
stormtroopers being
coming.
like, stop,
Yeah.
wait, nobody runs up, not another blaster. So I was
Right.
like, I've always wondered that, like, what were they shooting at? Just a person, maybe? Like somebody was trying to
Somebody
run
further
and they
down.
blasted him, maybe? I don't really know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But apparently they missed him because it almost hit C-3PO. So here we are back to the blast points are too precise.
All I know is both sides never seem to care about droids in this universe at all.
No, I mean,
like,
I
all
feel
the
like
time.
the
It's
good
crazy.
side does. Like, you see, like,
Well, I mean, like,
Certain
they just
ki-
ignore them in combat is what I mean. Like, they're not a
what
priority.
are they going to do?
Well, I mean, they do a lot of things.
I mean, R2 is granted.
He always is doing stuff,
He's the only droid that's never had his memory wiped. So, like, nobody's going to know that.
I guess.
Besides,
I mean, we've seen,
I mean, I guess
and now
somebody
in
who
Clone
knows
Wars and
R2.
stuff, we saw whole platoons of droids being sent on missions, like doing nefarious
well,
things
there was that
against
Clone
the
Wars
Republic.
episode where they found
Chopper
Gregor
always
and
doing
like
stuff.
that. Yeah,
I mean, the droids have been known to do things against the Empire,
yeah.
and they didn't even care. I don't know. It just seems weird.
It is weird, but
They
then
just
again,
always ignore
they're not
them.
like a physical threat.
Yeah,
You know, like if you're in a ship and you're trying to arrest or detain or, you know, kill
right. The
whatever,
people. Yeah,
then it's
you're-
like you have your mission. Those people can shoot back at you. That droid has to roll up to you, or a protocol droid has to
Right.
centipede walk super slow up to you.
true.
They're not a physical threat, so it's like I understand why they're not going to blast them or anything
Yeah,
like that.
it's just funny. But that makes me think that, like, when they're walking down the hallways and there's all this blaster fire going off,
When
and stuff,
C-3PO
it's-
walked across the hallway during
Yeah.
the whole fight, yeah.
I'm like, both sides are just like, just ignoring the droids. Like,
No,
oh, just
yeah.
don't shoot them.
Yeah.
Just try to get that
That's
trooper
okay.
down.
They're fine. We'll just we'll take them with us or something. I don't know.
Compare that to every Star Wars video game I've ever played.
Where I
If there's a
destroy the
droid over,
droids.
I'm gonna slash him with my lightsaber.
Jedi Knight Academy was one. There's R2 and C-3PO in one of the hangars on Tatooine, and it's them, and it's C-3PO's like voice, you know. And every time I can't help myself, I just kill him, and I don't know why. I love them both, great droids, but every time I have to do it, you know.
That's funny. So they get in the escape pod. They jettison out.
No life forms.
The troopers like, hey, scanned it. Don't waste money shooting that thing, I guess. 'cause-
Yeah. Well, it makes sense to me now. Like when I was younger, I was like, well, wouldn't you think? Because he says, I think, yeah, he was like, there's no life forms on that pod.
Right.
It must have short functioned or
Right,
malfunctioned,
right.
whatever. And so I was like, when I was a kid, I was like, well, you don't think that there's droids on there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I mean, it makes sense. Like they bombarded the Tantive with numerous rounds, you know, from their cannons and stuff like that. So it's like, I understand. And they blew the door and who knows what else they messed up and were shorting out, trying to get the data, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, it makes sense as why he was like, nah, they probably just shorted out. But when I was a kid, I was like, they're right there. They're in there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It does seem weird.
And
it
all it
feels
took
like
was Vader to be like, go down to the planet's surface and we'll figure it out. You know what I mean?
another of my favorite lines is when they do go down there and they see the pod. And that one stormtrooper just pops up from the bottom of the screen.
It's got a little
He's like
ring.
nowhere on screen. He just pops up from the bottom, holding like a washer or a gasket or
Look,
something.
sir, droids.
That's the dumbest line I think I've ever. Look, sir, droids.
Every time I think about that moment when they were combing the beach, I think of, oh crap, what is the parody of Star Wars?
In Family Guy or
no,
Robot
it's
Chicken or
no, it's the movie. They made a
Spaceballs.
movie. Spaceballs. I think
There's a
about
lot of parodies,
when
dude.
they were actually like told them to comb the sand, and they have combs
Oh,
combing the
yeah, I know
sand
what
all
you're
the time. I don't know why I think about that so much.
my Schwartz.
Your Schwartz is as big as mine.
Should have charged my Schwartz.
But yeah, no, that scene when he pops up, that kills me too. It's just all the time, think right in the camera view.
I love it. Did you notice too that like now that we have all these other movies and stuff, that skeleton that was on the cliff when
It's
C-3PO
supposed to be a crate dragon.
it was supposed to be a crate dragon. They've said that
Super
for however
small.
long. But we've now seen what a live crate dragon looks like in Mando. There's no way that skeleton.
I thought
could
about that
fit.
the other day
Like,
when I was watching
what?
it again. I was like, because like you get that close up when C-3PO is in front of it,
Yeah.
and its head is like its mouth is small. Like
It's
there's no
nothing
way
like-
it's going to open up like the crate does in Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
my only explanation to that is it's a baby. It's not a full grown crate.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that can make sense for it to be that small, unless they
It's
have
wildly
like
different,
different varieties
Like
of
different
crate dragons.
species.
Yeah, like I mean I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's the only thing that makes sense to my head is that.
They look so different in Mando.
Yeah. Another thing I like about the whole when they first get to the thing was them arguing back and forth.
Yeah.
C-3PO and R2 when C-3PO wants to go that way, R2 wants to go this way, and 3PO's like, I'm not going that way. I'm going this way. You can go that way by yourself. And after they say their last things, R2's like rolling away, but all you hear is like, beep, boop. He's like talking
He's talking
smack. I
crap.
feel like
Yeah.
as he's rolling away. C-3PO can't hear it, but R2's like, I'll show him. This is.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
I love it a lot.
Going to when we meet Luke for the first time.
Yeah.
I like that scene too a lot. I like a lot of like almost every scene out of this the originals.
It's funny. I was just saying to you when we watched episode 3 that like the most iconic lines ever are from that. I'm thinking the same thing as I'm watching this movie. I'm
Yeah.
like every line is iconic
Yeah.
and repeatable, but
Luke.
yeah, everything in that entire scene, dude.
Yeah. I noticed when they take the red and white droid, they say he's an R2 unit.
Yeah, he said an R2.
That was
I mean,
kinda
it's not.
confusing. I know. It's what is it? Is it R5?
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, he said this R2 unit has a bad motivator, and I
Right.
was like,
He's
wait,
not- he's 19,
not an
man.
R2.
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know.
He's another
He just
astromech.
wants to go. He just wants to go to the Tashi station and get some power converters. That's all he cares about right now. You know what I mean? No, when so R5 is like rolled out and his motivator goes bad, and they and I think when 3PO was like, "Oh, that R2 unit is really good," blah blah blah.
Right.
And so then Luke's like, "Uncle Owen, well, what about that one?" And it cuts to R2 and Uncle Owen. You can see like R5's leg.
Oh, he's
sitting
still
on the side.
lined
He's
up
still
in the.
there in the
I
line,
know.
and the
I saw that
Jawas are
too.
around it. I noticed. For the first time, I noticed it the other day,
Yeah.
and I was like, "There's no way they got him back that fast." But
No,
it was just
and
one
in
of
the
those
very next
snippets.
scene
Yeah.
when they
He's
cut back, he's still
back,
standing
yeah.
over there by like the Jawas are then picking him up,
Yeah.
like it was before they even grabbed him.
Right.
It's just one of those things. Like that movie is so old and has a
They
ton
have
of little editing
Yeah.
moments in it.
Yeah.
That's
There's
how
a lot of movies like that though. Like if you ever pay attention, like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter
You'll-
what movie it is, what franchise it is. There's always going to be little things like
Mhm.
somebody's coat will be unbuttoned in its thing.
Exactly,
They turn back to him, it's
yeah.
unbuttoned, or he doesn't have a hat. I don't know. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like something real little.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I noticed that. Like I was watching it and all I see was R5's leg, and I was like,
You're like, wait a minute.
huh. you
Yeah,
know.
I've noticed that too.
Yeah.
That's funny. I know like a little bit later than that when R2 runs away, he convinces Luke to take off the restraining bolt, and then
Yeah.
R2 runs away.
Yeah.
Luke is worried about chasing him in the night because the Tuskens are out
Right.
there, so he's like, we're gonna go
Go
next
in the
morning.
Yeah.
So he takes him and they go. When he gets knocked out by the Tuskens, he discovers them after they get R2
Right,
back
right.
and everything.
I see one of them now.
right in front of
him.
He knocks the Tusken knocks Luke unconscious and then drags him over there.
Yeah.
They start like looting his ship, and Ben Kenobi comes out, makes the weirdest noise that you'll never hear again in all of Star Wars. And the whole point of that, behind the scenes,
Yeah.
is that weird scream is Ben imitating the sound of a crate dragon.
You told me that too. Like
Yeah.
I thought it was just him yelling.
He
like,
screams
for the
so
longest time.
weird. He's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and it was weird. It was really weird.
and and it made sense because I was like, why did the Tuskens get scared because of this old man flailing around at them?
In the Kenobi book, like the one that I told you about with like Plug Eye and
Okay,
Obi-Wan
yeah.
is helping the Tuskens, at the end, blah blah blah. The farmers and stuff, like the moisture farmers and like the towns around them, they paid a guy who was like, him and his group would set up a call. I can't remember what the group was called. Anyway, it was like a alarm system, but it was to imitate a crate dragon.
Ah,
And that's how they drove off Tuskens. They either drove them off with that when they played it, the Tuskens would leave. If they didn't, it doesn't matter because that call would be good. Like it was so loud,
okay,
and they would hear it, and they would come in and fight the Tuskens off, whatever.
okay,
But
okay.
after you told me that, I was curious if like that would be the reason that
Hmm.
he knew. But I don't think that book's canon. They might have. I mean, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it came off afterwards. Obviously, like that book
Sure.
was made after A New Hope.
Yeah.
But like, it's kind of like after reading that book, it's like I wonder if that's like
It kind of gives further
lore
evidence.
wise, as
Yeah.
that's how Obi-Wan knew that they were going to be afraid of. But then again, he was on Tatooine for 20 years, so it's like,
Right.
you know, all right, you know, I mean, he would learn that just by anything. But,
Yeah. And we even saw them at odds with the Great Dragon in Mando. That's
Yeah.
why they were helping Mando.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I do think it's kind of funny. I don't mean to jump backwards, but one thing that I noticed that was really funny was, like, I was thinking about when the Jawas go to sell the droids to Owen and they pull up to Lars homestead, and they're there with this giant sandcrawler that's moving at like 2 miles an hour
Yeah.
across the sand. It's big, it's metal, it's loud as it's
Right.
just rumbling around. And I'm trying to equate that to like modern day stuff, and it cracks me up because like you think about like a door to door salesman just coming up to your house.
With a big
Knocking on
cat
the
dump
door.
truck.
Yeah, now we've just got this giant
Yeah.
construction vehicle. You hear him coming for 2 hours.
Yeah.
You live in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
There's one car coming.
Hey,
And
man,
then
you
all
need
these
some
salespeople
gutters?
get out. They just start lining up droids. They don't even speak the same language as you.
Right.
They just start jumping out, speaking some nonsense.
When Luke was coming up to it's in the exact same area. I just thought about this. When Luke was running up to the sandcrawler to go look at the droids with Uncle Owen,
Yeah.
there was. It was that group of Jawas that was on like the corner of the
Yeah, the
sandcrawler.
kids.
Was it kids?
They were trying to get their first look at humans, and then like they see he makes eye contact, and they're like hee hee hee, and they hide.
Yeah.
That's Jawa's kids, yeah. Which all of the Jawas were
They were
like
played by
kids
kids, right?
of the staff, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why there's so many, like the range and size
There
is
was
so
one
big.
small one when they got R2. And
They're like-
I love it so much because he's like super short compared to the rest.
Right.
And so you have all the other ones that are carrying R2 through the thing.
And one of
And
them's
he's got like
barely-
one hand and he's like, "Ah," he's like trying his best to help, you know, but he's like super small. I always thought that was really funny.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, they're like, if memory serves, they're between the ages of like 9 and 16.
That's cool.
There's just a bunch of the kids of
Yeah.
the staff, which is cool.
I like that. I like how they do that too. I mean, there's always little tiny things. Like Carrie Fisher's daughter was in the sequels.
Yeah.
Of,
In the sequel trilogy, yeah. She's actually sort of
was it
important.
7?
I know she's in.
Was it 8? Or it
I
might
know
have been
she's in
both.
8 and 9.
Oh,
'cause
maybe
she's-
it was 8
she's
and
like a
9 that I'm
general.
thinking, yeah.
Sort of.
I always
Maybe she's
thought that
not a
was cool.
general, but she's like high
She's
enough
higher,
up there.
yeah,
She's
higher
in like
rank.
the command room doing something.
That's right. Yeah. I think she did
So-
radar. Wasn't she?
Yeah,
like
she
a
was
radar
something
tech or
about
something like that?
communications or radar or something. Yeah.
Oh, I always thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Let's jump a little bit further into the movie.
Yeah.
So we go to Tatooine. We see, we meet Luke. We meet Uncle Owen. Then we hear about old Ben. Luke makes a connection. Well, maybe Ben's Obi-Wan.
Right.
Uncle Owen doesn't like Obi-Wan at all, which we see again in the Kenobi series.
Right.
So we go through. Tusken Raiders happen. We meet them. Ben comes out, does his his Crate Dragon imitation. It works. He gets them,
Scares them away.
takes
yeah.
them back. They go to his hut and they're talking about Anakin or
Telling him
tell him about his father,
about his dad, yeah.
And he brings up the Clone Wars and Luke's like, "Oh, you fought in the Clone Wars?" And he was
Right.
like, "Yeah, I was a Jedi Knight, same as your father." And went through and told him about him. He's the best pilot in the galaxy.
Right.
And Luke picks up the lightsaber, he hands it to him or whatever, and Luke's like, "Huh?" And he points it right at his face.
It's
We
one of
talk
my
about
favorite-
this all the
it's so
time.
stupid.
I love it. One accidental finger slip and he was done. But I always thought that was funny. But
I love that scene.
they get together, they go out and they find, he shows them the message.
Hmm.
Obi-Wan's like, "Oh, well, you're going to come with me, right? Like, I need your help." And
Yeah.
Luke was really hesitant.
Yeah, he's not gonna go.
He didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And Obi-Wan was like, "Well, then you can stay here and be just like your uncle or whatever." And Luke was like, He's like, "I'll take you." What did he say? "I'll take you as far as Anchorhead."
Yeah,
or
he said,
something
"I
like
can
that."
take you to Anchorhead, so you
Yeah.
can get transport to Mos Eisley." And,
Right.
Yeah.
They end up going to Mos Eisley doing this stuff. They find Han and Chewie
Yeah.
sitting up there with Boshek.
So like, yes. Just before that, I mean, the reason that he decides to
Oh,
actually
right. Yeah,
go
yeah,
is
yeah.
because
I left the part
the
out.
Empire tracked the droids to the Jawas,
Uncle
which
Owen and Aunt
means
Beru.
that they can track them to Uncle Owen.
Yeah.
So he takes off to go find them. And the only reason why I wanted to come back to
Of
that
course.
spot is because there's a really cool fan theory I like a lot,
Okay.
which is that when Luke arrives there, Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, the Lars entire homestead, it's on fire.
It's on fire.
It's been
burning,
destroyed.
yeah.
It's very obvious the Empire made it there.
What an
and they
impact
killed
scene
everybody.
too, right there, where we see Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru outside. They were burnt. I mean, it was nothing but their skeleton.
That's what the fan theory is because you only see their skeleton essentially, is that maybe they actually had hired Boba Fett to track them down and kill them. That's how they tracked everybody to each spot so well, and that's the reason why in the next movie Vader's hired Boba Fett. He's on the ship, and he's specifically mad at Boba, and he's like, no disintegrations.
Oh.
The whole point and the fan theory is Boba disintegrated the two of them. Because when have you ever seen a stormtrooper kill someone
like
and it
that.
looked like Owen and Beru in that scene?
Yeah.
We've never seen
usually just
anything
like a
like
blast
that.
in the back, something like
They-
that.
they're-
you know.
Like obliterated bad.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever looked like that from a stormtrooper before. So that's like a cool fan
That's
theory.
crazy.
And we know he's on Tatooine at this time.
Yeah.
We see him in this movie with Jabba.
Yeah.
Like, surely if Vader knew who Boba was, has hired him in the past, that's all pretty
Oh,
believable.
that's right. The
It's a pretty
rendition
good.
of it. He's Jabba's out there by the
Mhm.
Millennium Falcon when
Yeah.
Han's getting the ship ready.
Yeah.
That's right.
So he would have been there at this time. Confirm, like all of that checks out. It's a
Yeah.
pretty cool fan theory. I like that one.
I mean, it makes sense, especially with the blast points.
and how
Like he says,
that they're
the
precise and all
stormtroopers are the
that.
only ones that can do that. and
maybe
it's
Boba
like,
was helping at that point too.
maybe he
and
was
like,
the only one doing it.
he was tracking. That's why they found what they
Yeah.
found. Maybe
That would make sense.
it's cool. It's a cool theory.
Yeah,
I like that one.
that's pretty
But
cool.
then we can fast forward to right where you were, where we entered the cantina. Super
Great
cool
scene,
scene.
dude.
Oh,
All
man.
the different alien species is hanging out, playing games, whatever. You have the Cantina band, who's
the
just
best band.
You know, it's beautiful.
Do.
It's great. You see all the different species that are just background characters the whole time.
I love it.
I like I can't remember what they're called. We see them in the Clone Wars too, but they have it's the white furry alien with the big eyes. He has the top. His mouth is like right here, but it's like a weird stem thing.
Yeah,
But he
yeah.
I don't know what he did, but he took his finger. He's like,
Yeah.
you know, I always
Yeah.
thought that was really funny.
He makes some noise with
Yeah,
that
yeah.
thing. Yeah. He's like a bug-looking guy. Like a,
yeah. I
Yeah.
can't remember what he's called.
I don't either.
But we see a bunch of different characters, and then you have
So many.
You know,
it's the first time you get really introduced to how alien Star Wars can be.
Yeah.
How alien this universe is.
so many different species in one room.
Yeah.
You know,
And you're like, whoa, this isn't just this guy in this desert planet with a couple of random species. This is a big world.
Yeah.
This is a big
yeah,
universe.
you got
I thought it was
60
cool.
people inside of a thing that all of them are different
They're
species
so
compared
different.
to each other.
That's so cool.
Really cool. That's where we meet Dr. Evazan and
Panda Baba.
Panda Bobo, Panda Express.
Honey Walnut.
Chicken.
I like this guy.
And
He's
I
pretty
still
cool.
can't remember his name.
Panda Bobo
We
is
just looked over
as
it.
close as it's going to
Panda
be.
Bobo. So we see them too. You know, it's he doesn't like you. I don't like you either.
He starts talking crap and bragging about himself.
Yeah.
He's like, I've got the death system on 12 systems.
Right.
That's not a good thing. Why are you bragging
The
about
whole
that?
time Luke's like, You know, he goes back to talking to the barkeep, whatever.
Why would you brag about that? You're in a cantina and like probably at least a third of the people in there are bounty hunters.
Yeah,
That's not a great idea to be like, oh, I'm wanted everywhere.
I guess because you're in the cantina,
He's
there's so
trying to-
many people.
he's trying to flex.
He's trying to
But-
be bad, trying to put like his, he's a big guy, tough
Yeah.
guy, out on this.
Not the
poor
right way to
little
do
farmer
that.
Boy. Yeah.
Greedo's probably about to get him next.
Right. Obi-Wan's like, all right, we don't want any trouble, and he was like, well, I want him dead or whatever.
Yeah.
And Obi-Wan pulls out his lightsaber. I like how the barkeep's like, no blasters, no blasters. It didn't even matter. But that was a cool scene too, watching that happen. Luke gets shoved in the corner. He gets up. Well, then they talk to Han, whenever they get their transport set up with the Millennium Falcon. And I always like how it's like when Luke was mad because of the price, and Luke was like, I'll just, we can take our money, we can get a small ship, and something, whatever. And Han was like, well, who's gonna fly it, kid? You? And he goes, yeah, I'm not such a bad pilot myself.
Right.
And then we cut to Luke crashing and getting shot down in the snowspeeder. He crashed into the swamp at Dagobah.
Had no idea how to jump to hyperspace. He was arguing with Han.
Right.
He's like pointing at everything. What's that?
Don't
What's that
touch
flashing
anything. He like smacks his hand.
Smack. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So we get all that figured out, and then we have that spy in the alley who
Yeah.
calls the Empire and saying, hey, we
Yep,
found
found
the
him.
guys.
Yeah.
I always liked him too. I thought he was a really cool race because he
Yeah.
has like a weird elephant trunk that comes down, but like his skin is like dark gray, grayish, whatever.
Right.
And he looks like very like ominous guy. He's got a black hood on, whatever. He's got those big goggles.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
When I first heard him, I incorrectly thought that he was a Bothan because we
Oh.
heard about Bothans in the next movie or whatever.
Yeah. Many
And I
Bothan
knew that they were
died.
spies. And I'm like, oh, if all the Bothans are spies, it makes sense that maybe the Empire
Yeah.
also had Bothans. But I didn't know what Bothans were supposed to look like at that
They're
point.
like wolf
They're kind of like cats.
cat.
Yeah, they're kind of like
things.
cat people.
Yeah. They're furry. I know that.
But yeah, I didn't. find out about them until like a lot later,
Right,
you know.
right.
And I just remember in the next movie remembering this guy being the only like clear spy that we had seen.
Do you know the way that I figured out what a Bothan looked like?
Huh.
The original Battlefront.
Oh, really?
Well, because
in
when
the
I was a
classic
kid,
one?
when I was a kid, like I didn't Google nothing like that,
No.
obviously, and so
No.
it was like in the original Battlefront, one of the characters that you could play had for the rebellion. I think he had like that little like shotgun blaster thing that would shoot like 4 blaster
Yeah,
shots
I'm
out.
starting to remember what you're talking about.
He was
Yeah.
that, and that was a Bothan. And I was
Yeah.
like, I never knew that. Like, I always wondered like what they looked like, and that game was what showed me what a Bothan was. So I always thought that was cool.
I think I remember that. The
Yeah.
character in the game, he was like almost like hunched over a little bit when you
Yeah.
went to select him.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
It was
about.
pretty cool. So that's how I figured out what they look like. So anyway, so the spy does this thing. Like I
Calls
said,
them
I
over.
like him. And when he talks, he
Yeah. He's awesome.
It's pretty cool. So the stormtroopers go out. A little thing, and I can't remember where I heard this from. If it's like legends, or if it was canon, or if it was like a fan theory.
Oh,
I can't remember. But when when Han and everybody's by the Millennium Falcon, and those stormtroopers come out.
right.
There was one stormtrooper. Like I said, I can't remember where I heard it or if it was true or if it was fan theory or not. But there was one stormtrooper who I wish I could remember the whole thing. Something about either he knew Han or Han spared him one time or something, or he didn't agree with doing this or something like that.
Right.
He ended up like we watched all those stormtroopers getting shot.
right.
But this one stormtrooper that was behind the captain or the commander, the one that had the pauldron on or whatever, he shot him in the back to save Han Solo.
Right.
And so that was how supposedly
How they
would've
escaped
died.
and whatever, yeah.
It was because of him shooting
It-
somebody who had Han in his sight.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was cool.
It
Like I
is
said, I
an
don't remember
interesting
where I
theory.
heard it from, and like the whole story behind it. I'd have to look it up again. But
You'd
when
have
I
to
read that-
imagine there's defectors probably on both sides.
we've seen
in this
defectors
thing.
like crazy, whether it's
You
books
see that
or
way
anything
later.
like that.
Yeah.
In Andor, we saw the one Imperial officer go and meet
Luthen.
Luthen,
Yeah.
and he was.
I mean, he was
double
he was a
spy.
plant
Yeah.
for the whole time.
Well, right.
There's tons of people that Callus and all those other
Yeah.
guys that switch sides,
Yeah.
and even in the later movies, the stupid ginger kid I didn't like very much kind of flipped sides, didn't he?
Ginger kid.
Uh,
Hux?
yeah. Did he flip sides?
No, he
Yeah,
died.
He didn't give any information away.
Kylo Ren died, or Kylo Ren killed him.
Okay. I thought for some reason I remember
I
him
think.
and Finn talking and him like switching sides, but it's been so long since I've seen
Right.
those.
No, but
But-
Ben switched sides. Obviously. He
Yeah,
ended
yeah,
up
and
leaving at the end, he switched back to being good with
Callus and like a couple of other people
Palpatine. Callus was a cool.
turned into
switcheroo,
Fulcrum
Yeah.
at the very end
Mhm.
there, which is
I always
pretty
thought that
pretty
was
neat.
cool.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that anyway. So I always
Did you
thought that was
notice,
cool.
by the way, when they're escaping in that scene there with the Falcon, that Han's the only one shooting back at them, right?
Yeah.
And all he has is his DL-44 pistol,
Yeah.
and some of his shots missed and hit the ceiling above them,
Yeah.
and some of the ceiling comes crashing down on them.
Yeah.
That's a
I
powerful
think he meant
cowboy
to
gun.
do that. I think that's what he meant. I
He
think
was
he was
like-
trying to like one
Create
shot crush
rubble.
4. You know what I mean? Which is cool. Like
Yeah,
you see
maybe
that
he-
kind of stuff a lot. Like when
Yeah.
they blow like the in the Death Star, they blow the panel controls.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean?
closed doors
Yeah,
and
right.
stuff like
you
that.
see stuff like that.
That's
all the
true.
time,
I
which
guess
is
I never
cool.
thought about that being intentional.
Right.
He knows how strong his gun is and that it would probably do that.
Yeah.
But to me, when I saw that, the first thing I thought is like, that's a powerful weapon.
Yeah.
That blaster from that little pistol, and we always know that
Well,
after
I
this,
mean,
his gun is
He's going to
strong.
carry something that's good. You know what I mean? He's
And
not
now
gonna carry
from
something
the
small.
Solo movie, we know why that gun's so strong. It's actually a sniper rifle
Yeah, you could
that's
break
been
it down.
modified to be a pistol. So
Really
that's like
cool.
a high caliber
Yeah.
weapon in this universe.
Yeah, I like it, and it's a cool looking pistol too. That's
Yeah,
a
it
cool
is.
little weapon.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. But yeah, so that's a cool little thing about the Stormtrooper. Like I said, I'll have to look and get you the whole story about it. But when I read it, I was like,
I know.
you know, that's cool.
So-
I like how they take off too when they take off out of the landing
Right, in
like,
that hangar or
hangar
whatever.
bay or whatever,
Mhm.
and they take off and they go up, and there's other stormtroopers that are like outside, and the Millennium Falcon takes off, and they're like, "What?" And they look around. And I don't know why that scene always makes me.
There's
laugh,
so
too.
many like little scenes that made me laugh, but like when they're immediately after that they go into space and there's 2 Star Destroyers that are coming
Yeah.
up on them, and he's like, I gotta wait for a moment to do the calculations for
Yeah.
hyperspace, blah blah blah. And Luke, everybody's all freaking out, like, oh no, they're catching up to us. And he says, like, don't worry, I know a few tricks to lose them. And then the camera just shows the ship still flying completely straight. Like, what was your trick? You didn't do anything. You didn't do a barrel roll.
Right.
You didn't go down or up.
Nothing cool.
You just kept going straight.
Right.
What was your trick to lose them?
Right. Yeah.
It was so
It
funny.
was funny. So we'll have to kind of jump a little bit here. So we'll go straight to the Death Star.
Yeah.
Watching them enter it. Oh, well, we can't forget about the That's No Moon.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
It's a space station.
Yep. They see a TIE
He's going
fighter.
right to that little moon. Yeah.
I like that a lot.
So going into the Death Star, I do like how they got into it. Like they abandoned it. Everybody's like, yeah, there's nobody in there, blah, blah, blah. And they were in the smuggler compartments.
Yeah.
They get the stormtroopers come up there acting like they were the scanning crew. Stormtroopers go, they punch them, knock them out, whatever they did. Or no, they blasted them.
Right. They
somebody
knocked out those first two, and then they called the stormtroopers to come up.
Yeah.
And then there's blasting that
I
happens.
don't know who. It would have had to been the stormtrooper because the armor that Luke
I
and
know
Han
they're
put
wearing
on
good
was
armor.
clean,
I
right?
know. Well,
They took the helmets off.
that's
Maybe
right.
I don't know.
It was a perfect shot. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to think too hard on that.
Right. But it was cool. I like how they did that, and then they go through and trick the deck officers and everything, or the hangar officers about it, whatever.
TK421.
TK421. Why aren't you at your post? Yeah.
Oh, we got a bad communicator.
Right.
Let me open this door. Ah, Wookiee!
Wookiee. Yeah. So Ben goes off. Obi-Wan goes off to take care of the tractor beam because he knows they're not going to get out.
Right.
But Ben knew he wasn't going to come back.
Right.
He
That
knew
was
what
his
was gonna
plan at
happen.
this point. Yeah.
So then Luke and Han and are talking. R2 finds Leia, and he's like, "Oh, we have to go save her." Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
She's here. And they're trying to shackle Chewbacca, like Luke is.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, we'll just put these on real quick." And Chewie's like, "Roar," and does his roar and gets real mad. And he goes, "Okay, you can do it." Hands him to Han.
Yeah, I love that scene.
I like that a lot.
That's good.
When they go through and they're in the elevator, and Luke was like, "I can't see a thing out of this,"
Yeah.
That was funny. That
Yeah.
shows to show you that the Empire can't see nothing.
No.
They get up to
But yet they are very precise.
the Boba Fett. No,
Oh,
you got
okay.
me. You got me thinking.
That makes more sense now.
It does.
they can't shoot them at all this whole time.
Right,
so
right,
it
right.
makes sense.
I like the cell block scene when they go in and they're like, "Hey, we have a prisoner transport." And they're talking about Chewie, and he was like, "Oh, we haven't heard anything. Let me check run your numbers, whatever."
Yeah.
And so then Chewie like breaks it, which is cuffs it and snap. They were just there,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
he takes them off, and Luke and Han are like, "Oh, he's loose! Oh, look out!" And they're
Yeah.
like blasting all of the cameras and the locks and everything. I thought that was great.
It's very clever. I love it. I love it.
And so then the guy comes in on the comm on the desk, and Han picks it up, and he was like, "Everything's fine. We're all fine here. How are you?" And the guy's like, "What is your call number?" And he goes, "I ain't got time for this." And he blasts the comm thing. I like that. Like
I
that
love
whole
that.
prison block
Yeah.
opening part when they first get in there, plus that was amazing.
I know. I think it's funny. So like just a short ways after that, we get the duel again.
Yeah.
We get Obi-Wan and Vader.
Yeah.
It's a very important duel, and what it means and all this stuff.
Yeah.
We know the outcome to that. But I wanted to give like a big shout out if you've never seen it. I'm pretty sure you and I have watched it together. But if there's any listeners that have never seen it, it's called. So that fight between them is called Scene 38 in the actual how they number the scenes in Star Wars. And if you go to YouTube and you look up Scene 38 Reimagined, there's
like
a really cool thing that somebody has done on YouTube. I don't know who he is, but just props to that guy because it is amazingly remade.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really cool. They cut the scenes with Alec Guinness and Vader from that show and then made it look like modern CG and stuff mixed in there.
Yeah.
And it takes that fight to whole new levels and
Right.
it looks really, really cool. So
That's one thing I want to talk about before we do a pretty big jump here. Is when Obi-Wan and Vader, because Obi-Wan goes through and he deactivates the tractor beams. That's what his main mission was.
Right.
He knew he wasn't going to come back. He was there for another reason as well. It wasn't just that. So he goes through. He's walking through the hallways. He's like creeping around real good. Comes up to Vader. Vader comes walking out of like that dark hallway thing. It's always dark with Vader.
Oh yeah.
But it was cool.
It is a good scene.
They're talking, and Vader's what was it? I can't remember everything they said, but then Vader's like, "When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. Only a master of evil, Darth."
Yeah.
I always love that, like their little talking back and forth. their fights, I mean, it's a weak lightsaber fight. You know, Alec Guinness is older. Once again, we go back to kind of like how the Ian McDiarmid and everything was. And choreography, I'm sure, wasn't like it's, you know,
No.
it's nothing like it was today.
They didn't know what they were doing. They weren't
Exactly.
even supposed to hit
Well,
the
even
swords
suit
that
for
hard
Vader
because the
was
swords were
still-
old.
Yeah, and the suit that he wore
Mhm.
was still like well, Vader's suit was supposed to be limiting. That's what it was made for. He couldn't, you know, in lore, he could not pick his arms up past his head. He can only go so far up. That's why he didn't do ridiculous, you know, tricks and stuff like that, like Anakin used to.
Mm.
So it makes sense for Vader to kind of be more
Right.
thing. But in the suit for the actor was actually limiting for him.
Oh, yeah.
So that makes sense. Whatever. So they do their fight, you know, and they go through, and the stormtroopers see him fighting.
Everybody gathers around.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, what's happening over
Oh,
here?
this
You
is
know,
cool.
to get the popcorn. You know what I mean?
That's so neat.
And then you have, you know, Luke and Han and everybody. They're like, all right, now's our chance. Let's go. So they like run to the Millennium Falcon, and everybody's going, and Luke stops, and he looks over and sees Vader and Obi-Wan fighting, and you know, it looks like Ben. And Obi-Wan like looks over and sees him, and he smiles.
So, oh, this is
he
what I've
knows
been
it's
waiting
over.
for.
Yeah. I mean, he held time.
Mhm.
The stormtroopers aren't there anymore by the Falcon. He's got Vader right in front of him. There's no threat to Luke.
Right.
Luke can get out of here. He smiles, turns to Vader, and picks his lightsaber up and holds it directly in front of him. And Vader's like, all right, you know, and kills him. Nothing. It's just an empty cloak falls to the ground. Obi-Wan is now one with the Force.
Right.
Good scene. Cool thing. And Luke freaks out.
Right.
And they all start shooting at each other. And Han tells him to blast the door. He blasts the door. Vader's like slow walking. Like he's like intimidating. But he walks up and the door closes right in front of him, you know, before he can get out. And then you hear Obi-Wan through the Force, you know, run, Luke, run.
Yeah.
You know, that was cool. And then Han and Luke get the couch and they're trying to get up into the... Oh, that was...
Different parody.
I love that scene so much.
It's one of my favorite.
No. One thing I want to talk about that I absolutely love, and I like always talk to you about it, is when they were doing like the whole like Luke and Chewie were going chasing after those stormtroopers that they were shooting at, and they go running down the hallway and they turn the corner and it's like
such a
the barracks and it's like 100 stormtroopers and Han's like running down. He's like running down and yelling like ah, and he sees them. He's like wah! It's like a completely different yell as he comes running back the other way, and Chewie's like, "What's happening?"
It's so good. I love it so much. Chewie didn't know what to do, so he just chases after him, and then by the time he catches up, Han's going the other direction.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, whoops.
Right.
We're going back this way.
I like that.
I love it. I love it.
We're gonna have to jump to the end.
Pretty much, yeah.
Kind of covering everything in the middle. Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, C-3PO, R2. They go through and they go to the rebel base on Yavin.
Yeah.
They kind of meet up with them. They're doing their thing. They're telling them, you know, about the Death Star plans. Blah blah blah. Rebellion gets their squadron together, whatever, which is
they're coming up with their plan.
Right.
Yeah. Red.
Luke gets
Red
put into Rogue Squadron. Red 5.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yep. We saw in Rogue One the former Red 5 cadet who died, who took the Palute, so we know Luke takes his place.
Yep.
Yeah. I thought it was really funny too. Like just before this, they're on the way to the base or whatever, you know, and Leia comes over and she's comforting Luke. He's beside himself with the grief and everything because old Ben just died, a guy that he just met yesterday, and you know taught him a couple things about the Force.
Yeah.
And Leia has known him for a lot longer. We
didn't
now
even
know
talk
that
about
Leia's
Alderaan
known him
getting
for
blown
way
up.
more. But also her parents, her entire family, everyone she's ever known that's
Yeah.
grown up on Alderaan just got obliterated,
Yeah.
and she saw that happen with her
Yeah.
own eyes. And she's the one comforting Luke in this
Yeah.
moment. And I'm like, wait a
She's
minute.
so calm. Luke's like, oh, this sucks.
He's old man I met
Ben."
yesterday. Dang it.
We didn't even talk about Alderaan getting blown up. That
I
was
know.
a crazy scene too.
I know.
But she was so snippy to Tarkin too up until that point.
I love that. Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. The one of my favorite things that I like to laugh at too, because it kind of just makes you think about like good guys and
Yeah.
whatever, and how in a lot of movies the good guys are like goody two shoes.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of moments in Star Wars where that doesn't necessarily mean like when Leia shot the guy in cold blood and
Yeah.
everything. But then in the meeting where they're going over the Death Star plans, the squad's saying that like, oh, that meter, that shaft is only like 2 meters, so you got to shoot
Yeah.
it or whatever. And Wedge leans over to Luke and he's like, it's only 2 meters. That's impossible to shoot. And Luke's response was, I used to bullseye womp rats back home all the time
Yeah.
in my T-16, those
Yeah.
little skitters or whatever they're called. What are they called?
Skyhopper.
Skyhopper. And Why was he doing that? He was just shooting creatures for no reason out
Why
in the
not?
desert.
Why not?
Because it's
just
fun.
hunting. Yeah, they're probably varmints. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want them on your area.
On your farm, I
whatever.
guess.
Yeah.
It's
So
just
like, it
funny.
makes sense, but it's cool. I do like
I
that.
think he's just blasting too.
Yeah.
Also, it's a big rat.
Big rat. Enough for a proton torpedo. Hey. No, but yeah. So.
But yeah.
So
Then then we're gonna now do the Death Star
right.
run.
They're at Yavin. They're doing their thing. Luke gets
Mhm.
inducted to being in Rogue Squadron. Cool. Awesome. Hans doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to join. He gets his money for saving Leia.
Right.
And him and Luke have that little tiny argument thing. And Luke's like, well, I guess you're just gonna pack up and leave. And Han was like, yeah, I am.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, oh, well, good luck, whatever. And so Han said, hey, may the Force be with you. And Luke was like, and like left,
I don't want to hear that from you right now.
Right. And Chewie was like, hey, man, that was rude. Like, he did his little tiny little growl thing. Yeah. And Han was like, don't worry about it.
I know what I'm doing.
So we get to the Death Star run. What a cool. I say it so many times in Star Wars, every scene is cool.
It's fun. It's a really fun scene.
It is.
It's
right.
got so much going on.
Set S fools in attack position. You know what I mean? Like,
Right from the
get
very
outta here.
beginning. We get to see that you get Red Squadron and you get Gold Squadron, the
Yeah.
Y-wing bombers, and they've got a good plan on what they want to do. The plan quickly falls apart when
Before
Y
they
Squadron
even get to
gets destroyed.
Yeah.
So now you've got Red Squadron having to fill in for Gold because the Y-wings are all but dead.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they say the numbers at one point. They said in the Empire they said that there were 30 ships on the scanners. So obviously that doesn't count the Millennium Falcon because he wasn't there
Right.
in the initial run. But then when it's done and everything's
It's just Rogue
over,
Squadron. Just
there's Wedge because he pulled out early.
Yeah.
There's Luke. There's one Y-wing. And then there
right.
is the Falcon. So 3 out of the 30 ships survived.
That's how a lot of the battles went, though,
That's
for the rebellion.
bonkers.
A lot of the space battles went that way. I mean, it was, and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. You have an army who have flight academy.
Yeah, the
you
naval
know what I mean? The naval
capability
academy.
of
right.
the Empire is
And
massive.
then you have rebellion, the rebels, who have flown probably skiffs, have flown, just
Right. Whatever ragtag things
small
they could
ships
get.
that they owned or whatever. They weren't ready for combat. Now you had some people who were like from the Clone Wars, obviously,
Right.
that were generals or whatever, who have flown, who has done all this. So they're trying to teach these people who probably have never flown in any type of like sky war.
Right.
You're trying to teach them how to do certain things, how
Yeah,
to,
absolutely.
whatever, and it's going to happen that way. They're a militia.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the whole trench run was cool. Watching
great.
everybody go down, and then you had Luke. Wedge pulls out because he's getting too much heat.
Yeah.
He takes off, and Luke's like, "I got it. Don't worry, get out of here."
Yeah.
And Luke has his targeting computer,
Right.
and he flips it up.
Turns that off. Yeah.
Another thing that I say, like when we play like Rogue Squadron or Rogue Squadrons is the name of it. There's so many
Look,
games
you
out
turned
there.
your targeting computer off. What's wrong?
Nothing. I'm fine. It's nothing.
They were like, okay.
All right. Yeah, he's got it.
Nobody said anything. Yeah, all right.
Luke, use the Force. Luke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. So he gets up super close and just goes to just with feel,
Blast it.
hits it halfway.
Didn't impact on the surface.
Did not impact
No,
on the surface.
You got it right in there.
Right in. Poor Red Leader. He'll get it one day.
Well, not anymore.
Actually,
He died.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
No, he dies in that.
he did die. Oh, that's
Mhm.
right. And Porkins.
Porkins died first.
R.I.P. Porkins.
I think Porkins is the first one to die.
He was.
On screen, at least.
Yeah.
But yeah.
He dies in every movie. Huh. It's just like Shock T.
Yeah, she died 3 times.
3 times in one movie. No, but then the ending when Han comes through, you have Vader and his little squad that gets up behind Luke.
Yeah.
And it was cool because like Vader could sense something just weird.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
He knew it wasn't just a regular rebel and nothing like that. I don't know if he knew, obviously, if it was his son yet or not.
No, but
he
he
had a
had a
Force
hesitation,
sensitivity.
and he was like, this guy's really strong in the
Yeah.
Force, is what he says.
Right.
When
Oh,
he's like
that's right.
hovering,
Yeah,
getting
yeah,
ready
yeah.
to shoot him. So like he like had almost a hesitation in shooting him. Like it
Which
was
the
almost difficult.
Right, and he blasted R2. Or somebody
Yeah, he did.
blasted R2.
Yeah, Vader did.
Yeah. And so R2 gets fried. Han comes in, and
Yep. He
Blast-
blows.
he
He
blows
immediately
the-
blows the one TIE fighter up.
who flips around and
The
hits the
second
other
one got scared and said, "Let's leave." And the
Yeah.
second one hits Vader,
Right.
and then the second one crashes.
Yep, and then Vader goes into a spiral into the abyss.
Yep.
Which was kind of crazy too, because dude, I would have thrown up so hard in my helmet.
He's
Oh
just
my
watching
gosh.
machining away in space.
Right. Just-
Yeah, I couldn't have handled that.
But I liked Han when he does his like yell. He's like, "Yeah, let's blow this thing and go home."
Yeah.
So Luke does it, hits it, whatever. They take off. The Death Star appears to blow up completely.
Oh yeah.
Which later we find out it only blew up halfway. Was it halfway or did it blow up the whole thing?
No, that one's blown up. It's
Was it the whole thing?
second,
second
Death Star.
I'm sorry.
That has a big chunk that lands on the planet.
Because they weren't done yet. Anyway, so they go land at their thing, and then we have our the
Metal celebration.
Metal celebration, yeah.
Whatever we call that.
there was a
celebration.
video where they took out all the music
I saw this too.
and they were like walking down the thing.
It's just real noise.
Yeah, like
like
you
a
hear a
con-
guy in the back and he goes. And Chewie, they didn't do Chewie's roar, like they like dubbed it, so you just hear ha.
That's so
It was
terrible.
great.
I love it.
But the the metal celebration, R2's over there, he's all happy and stuff.
It's where we learned for the first time that the rebellion is more racist than we thought, right?
no aliens.
That everyone who was involved gets a medal
Oh.
except for Chewbacca.
I thought you were talking about the alien thing. That's true. I didn't think. No, he got one, right?
No, he doesn't get one. That's
It
the
was
whole
just
point
Luke
of
and
why.
Han?
Way later in like episode 9 or whatever, they gave Chewie a medal just to appease fans.
Oh.
It was so pathetic.
I wonder if he just wouldn't let anybody put it around his neck. It's the same thing as the cuffs. You know?
Yeah.
He's like,
He's the only one. He
That's
didn't
funny.
get a medal.
I don't know why I
Yeah.
said no aliens. He has. they
I
have
don't know. There's a lot of
in the
aliens in the rebellion.
A bunch.
But yeah, it's just like a funny joke that he
Right.
didn't get a medal when
That's
he
funny,
should
yeah,
have.
I like
But also the way they viewed him was real weird in this first movie, like behind the scenes and stuff. Some of the deleted scenes that they cut out
Yeah.
have Han like petting him like a dog, and we know some of his inspiration was from Lucas's dog
right.
of why they created the character to begin
Right.
with. And there's a couple weird moments where they treat Chewie like a dog, and you're like, that's kind of weird, like, but like. For the most part, now he's totally normal. Everything's fine, and
Yeah.
everybody loves him. But
It's Han's
it
best friend.
seems interesting that, in retrospect, you look at it, you're like,
Another good quote that I like is when they're in the Death Star, they get out of the trash compactor.
Oh, yeah.
And they're walking through, and Leia's like arguing with Han, and Chewie's in front of her, and she's like, "Well, somebody get this walking carpet out of my way." And Chewie's like, "Huh?" That's
true. I think my favorite fun fact, maybe it's not my favorite, but it's one that I feel like a lot of people don't know. I don't know if I don't think we've ever even talked about it, but Darth Vader, when they were doing the scene at the end, they actually intended to have him just in another TIE fighter, but then they were like, how are the fans or the audience going to obviously know that one is Darth Vader? And so they decided, well, we'll make a new ship. That'll be Darth Vader's ship. That's obviously the TIE Advanced.
Right.
But the first idea that they had when they drew and made a physical model, they got as far as making a physical model.
Okay.
It wasn't a TIE Advanced. He was in what they called a double cockpit TIE, a TIE bomber.
Oh.
They made the TIE bomber first before it was supposed to be a bomber.
Yeah.
It was just that was Vader's unique ship.
Okay.
And so they actually have the full model and everything for what ended up becoming the
TIE
bombers
bomber.
that we see in the later
Right.
movies. But the bomber was actually made in this movie, in the
Okay.
very first one.
That's cool.
Just, most people don't know that because
Right.
it's just behind the scenes and like the models and
Right.
stuff.
Right.
And then they decided to make the TIE Advanced instead, which I'm glad because it looks way cooler.
It does. It looks really cool. I like it. Oh, cool.
Yeah, I figure that's probably a pretty good stopping spot for where we are.
Yeah.
And we always end up wishing we could talk about these things forever because it's our life, but
Unfortunately, we just don't have the time.
that's fine. We'll bring it up in more things
Of
later.
course.
But
Yeah.
so we'll be glad to have Kathleen Kennedy joining us for the next segment.
All right.
Yeah, yay!
Bring it
It's
up.
gonna be great. So tune in next to our game. Take a little break, and we'll be right back
Yeah.
with Kathleen Kennedy.
Oh.
All right, thanks for joining back in. We're now going to be doing a brand new game that we've never done before. It's a little less of a game, but basically it's like a director's pitch. So kind of the main idea on this is just basically we each came up with like a movie or a show kind of idea, and we're going to pretend like we're pitching it to well, we are going to be pitching this idea to our producer here, and she's going to be playing as if she's like Disney, basically. So, well,
Disney.
Denny,
Denny.
that's why I said Kathleen Kennedy.
Denny.
So, her decisions might be terrible. We don't know.
Hey.
That's true.
Yeah. Hopefully, this Kathleen Kennedy is better than
Kathleen Kennedy.
Kathleen Kennedy. We're going to see who goes first, and then we'll each take our turn doing the pitch. She might have some clarifying questions, and then at the end, she's going to pick one of them to greenlight.
Who's gonna? You're gonna call it.
Red.
Oh shoot!
Is it red?
It is red.
I got a red.
You got a red.
I got a red.
Your time comes, and then it goes, and then it comes again.
Yeah. I think the few times that we've been okay. Well.
Just kidding,
All right.
buddy. You're doing real good.
So I'll start off and give you my idea on a new show. Okay. So working title, I named it Shadows of Freedom. Shadows of Freedom. And this is probably better structured as a TV show, but it could probably be anything, just kind of depending on what you want to do. But basically, the idea in this is that you've got like a young male protagonist, teenage years, like late teenage years, probably 16 to 18, something like that. It's kind of what I'm imagining. And he's just learning about his force powers for the first time. For the purpose of this, we'll call him Hero. I don't have like a name for him, but he's living on a remote planet. He's under strict rule. The government on this planet is like an authoritative regime that's just oppressive. He discovers his force sensitivity by accident when there's like a big emotional moment and he accidentally moves something with his mind. And he's scared, he's confused because of this regime on this planet. And he ends up stumbling upon an old hermit. The old hermit takes him in and shows him how to control his powers, and he starts learning how to use the force, basically. The hermit starts explaining that this regime that's in control, they say that they are there to protect the peace, but in actuality, they're very oppressive and they are controlling of the people. They stifle creativity and freedom. And now that his eyes have kind of been open to this, he sees that more, our hero, and as he's going about like his daily life, he starts to see that the people around him are not happy about their ruler situation, and they're all pretty scared of the government. And so it kind of makes him desire to free them, right? He starts to get the idea that they need help. Some point during his training, it becomes really clear that our hero is especially gifted in the Force. He's able to do things faster and easier than anybody else that this old hermit has ever seen. And the hermit tells him that like he has to be really careful with this regime around. You have to keep your abilities a secret. Despite the warnings, one day our hero uses these force powers to save his friend from a deadly accident. And it happens in a way that's very public in front of everyone. And so now everyone knows that he has these force powers. This changes his whole life because instead of being seen as a savior and a hero for helping his friend and saving his life, he's arrested and he's taken into jail. It opens his eyes even more to the nature of these people who are supposed to be peaceful, protecting regime. And now he is further fueled about wanting to fight back. While he's stuck in their imprisonment, while they're trying to figure out what to do with him, the old hermit comes to rescue him because he knows that this is sort of his fault. And the old hermit comes and rescues him, but in the process, he gets captured. So our hero is taken, he gets out, he's free now. And then he learns that when his mentor was captured, they publicly executed him for teaching the Force, unapproved teachings of the Force. So he goes back to the house where his mentor's teaching him, and he starts kind of looking for answers, basically. And he's looking through the belongings of the old man, and he finds all these artifacts, and he finds holocrons, and he starts digging into them. And it's at this point that both he and the audience learn that this old man was a former Jedi, and he started disagreeing with their teachings, how controlling they were. And so he learns that the holocrons that he started teaching him from were actually Sith teachings. And so our hero has been being taught Sith teachings this whole time. And now he is at a spot where he discovers that the Jedi are the people that were in this regime. So the oppressive people that are wanting to control all of the things and stifle freedom from his point of view, the Jedi are evil. So he has decided to embrace his newfound Sith identity. He determined to bring what he thinks is freedom to the galaxy, and he decides to go ahead and form a rebellion, continue his learnings from these Sith holocrons. He becomes essentially a Sith Lord, and he's openly fighting against the Jedi. And that would either be like leading us into season 2 or a next movie or whatever is the case here. So basically the main idea between how this movie is that it would be kind of a thing about a young man who's naive to the world, discovers force powers. As he's growing up, he's learning what right and wrong means, and how it's not necessarily right and wrong just as we might think, and that your own personal perspective could really change what you think is right and wrong. So that's kind of the main gist that I would want the audience to get behind.
That's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really interesting storyline. What timeline or, approximate time frame in the galaxy does this take place?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like the place it sits best is probably in the High Republic era, but in like a good bit before what we saw take place in Acolyte. So the place I feel like it would fit the most without messing anything up would be several hundred years before the first movie, before Phantom Menace. So it would still be a good bit before the Acolyte ever takes place. But I think that's probably the best spot it could be at. And the intention throughout the show would be to keep having like morally ambiguous moments, like maybe the deadly accident that he saves his friend from is like maybe it's a droid that got damaged and it's clearly going to kill his friend, and in order to save his friend he just crushes the droid with ease and obliterates it, so everyone sees power and they're scared. So you kind of understand the Jedi's perspective of like, that's not good. Why is this 18-year-old kid who definitely wouldn't be accepted into an academy wielding this kind of crazy power? And they would definitely arrest that guy. So like you could kind of understand their perspective as well, but also from his mind, he saved his friend's life and they're punishing him. So like that's kind of the point of the show.
Interesting. So I know you mentioned what we find out to be the Jedi are sort of controlling and imperious over this planet, and the people are unhappy. Do you have any specific ideas of how to make that realistic with everything that we know about the Jedi? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I kind of imagined that until the audience knows that they're Jedi, everything is handled through their enforcers. So, like, the Jedi would be a small number on this planet, and they are like a council or whatever, and they're telling the local, like, military, so to speak, the local police force what to do. And they're the ones who are kind of harassing the individuals on the civilians side. And so you find out that they're doing that, basically being sent by the Jedi. And from our main character's point of view, it's more about the Jedi not letting him just do whatever he wants to do, and he feels that that's very restrictive and blocking freedom. When in reality, they're trying to keep order throughout the galaxy, but their obsession with order being only the way they want it to be might be viewed by some people as stifling their freedom.
Okay. My, I think, last question is, you've mentioned only 2 specific characters, this hero and then the hermit who was training him, both of which are male. So I know one of the things that we do take care to make sure there are diverse perspectives in our movies. So have you put any thought into...
Well, Miss Kennedy, I didn't mention, but his best friend that he saves the life of is actually a young female. So you'll be very happy to know that we have lots of diversification in this idea.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well,
It's exactly what Kathleen Kennedy would be looking for.
I mean, you told me to be Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah,
I know you're both smirking, but
it was great.
it's a reality of entertainment in today's day and age.
All right.
All right.
Well,
So I guess that's up to me now.
yeah.
All right. So mine is going to be set around probably the same-ish time. It's going to be the High Republic era, like probably 300 years before the Phantom Menace, give or take.
Okay.
200 years maybe. You know what I mean? Just in that time area. So I don't really have like a set name. I was thinking like Strays of the Force, something like that. So it's going to be mainly focused on a small group of young Jedi, probably early 20s, who all three, probably not at the same time, but have withdrawn from the Jedi Order. Typically being not agreeing with the way that the Jedi have handled certain situations. So for like our main character, he had witnessed on multiple occasions other Jedi being slain in battle or stuff like that due to just really bad like directional calls. So eventually he had gotten fed up enough to where he was like, I'm done. His best friend in the order was the same age. They went to, they trained together as Padawans. They, as younglings, whatever. As he got ready to leave the Jedi Order, she had tried to stop him from doing so, but he had his mind made up already, and so he left. Flash 2 years, maybe a year. He has now found 3 others, Jedi or Force sensitives, whatever, who would have left the Order for some other reasons. And they get together and they're kind of like banded together. They're not doing bad, but they're not doing good. They're kind of more or less, they turn to mercenary work for the fact of they need money. They're bored of what they're doing, so on and so forth. So they're working for like getting hired by smugglers or by, bounty hunters, or either way, kind of like either side, good or bad, they're going to go work for. But they do not use weapons. They have kind of vowed to themselves that they won't draw a weapon or use a blaster, but they still carry their lightsabers. They kind of just keep them more tucked away, but they try their best not to use them. So they're using the Force basically for all of their encounters. Going through and doing jobs, everything like that. They get contacted by like their main informant, their main contact, and they find that they have a big job, which is supposed to pay way more than any jobs they've ever done. And this could be like the last score that they need for a good while, all 3 of them. So they talk about it, they accept it, they go to meet the guy, he tells them what they're going to do. So they have to go to the Jedi Temple, and they need to basically steal holocrons. And that's their thing, is to steal certain special information that the Jedi keep. So they go through, they're kind of back and forth and arguing, and they're like, we're just going to do it. But they swear right then they will not draw on a Jedi. They don't want to kill another Jedi. So they go through and they get to the planet in which the temple is at. They make their way into the temple, going through, sneaking around, doing all their stuff. They get to the holocrons, that get into the vault, I guess. Once they find the holocrons that they're looking for, the specific ones, they start kind of doing the thing, using the Force, trying to get them. They get one ish probably, and then once they try to move to the next one, like a security trips. In that time they start freaking out, so they have one, so they just start to get ready to leave. When they do, other Jedi will enter, which makes this big conflict, and the mercenaries will be wearing masks. They don't want to reveal their identity to these other Jedi. The Jedi draw their lightsabers, and they go to stop the mercenaries from trying to conduct whatever job they're doing, which comes into this big, like, the Jedi are coming out with lightsabers while the mercenaries are using the Force. In this whole thing, one Jedi gets through basically the little Force push battle, whatever, and he strikes down one of the mercenaries. So our main character will, at that point, get mad, but not tap into the dark side. He will Force push, like, ridiculous, like, tap into the Force and just completely throw this Jedi across the room into the same shelf as what the holocrons would be in. In that time, the other Jedi start to charge him. Well, he goes to grab his friend, and when he grabs the one who has been struck, a Jedi comes up, and you don't see the face. You just see, like, we'll say the backside of, like, the head as this Jedi comes through and, like, strikes down and slashing his face, which reveals his mask. And so he grabs his friend and looks up, and when he does, it was his friend, the girl from the original, like, when he left the Order. And they make eye contact. She sees him, he sees her, and she just stops and freezes. And immediately he grabs his friend and then runs out whatever, way that they came into. And that'll be where we cut from there. So that's all I got so far.
I really like it.
Yeah.
I like that you described a large number of characters. I think there's a lot of storylines, I think, that you could kind of pursue and kind of jump between different character perspectives, sort of interwoven as the action continues. Let me see. I don't have as many questions for you as I did for Sean. Do you have any specific actors in mind for any of these roles? Like, have you kind of pictured anybody?
I do not.
No? Okay.
I mean, it's just going to be kind of open auditions and everything like that for that,
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I really like the idea, and I think provided the like the kind of missions that these mercenary kids go on feel fleshed out. They don't feel like when you're playing a video game and you're, collecting 50 herbs, those kinds of side missions that you hate.
Right.
Like, as long as it doesn't feel like that, I think there could be a lot in there, and I like that there's some gray areas. Honestly, when you were describing your story, I think Sean has a very strong main character, and a really, set storyline. I think it could be supplemented with your storyline. I think you could kind of weave, you've got in your story, Jordan, Jedi, current and past Jedi. Sean has somebody who is technically on the Sith side, sort of against the Jedi. Like, all of this could be taking place on the same planet.
Right.
And you could have, start out with these sort of diverse perspectives and storylines and maybe not even realize that these people are even in the same place until they, start to come together towards a bigger conflict. Because I think that's what I was missing with Sean's proposal, and why I asked a little bit about diversity is just because I only heard about 2 characters. And so I was kind of imagining, well, what else is going on in this world? Who else is here? What else is going to sort of fill in all the storyline? And I think you may have provided that, what was missing from Sean's pitch.
We could get together. We could make a show or a movie.
We can do it. We can do it.
All right.
I think that's my final answer. You guys together or not at all?
We've done it.
Good at you, buddy.
Wow.
Hey, congrats.
Did we just got Kathleen
just got
Kennedy. She's only giving us one budget to make both shows.
Yes.
Man, she's smart. This girl.
Well, we get to live our dreams
Together.
That's a bigger dream. Well, cool. That was good.
That's a good way to end it. I like it.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
that was
that
fun.
was great.
I like to think that mine could be, like, if we tied it together, it would be kind of cool. Like,
Maybe.
I don't know how the story would go, but I do think mine would be like a one-off movie. I mean,
Yeah,
granted, it would end a little bit different than them making eye contact and doing something, whether it be like they ended up having to track them down or something happens. They, I don't know. We'll have to see. But then again, it would be like, if it was a movie, there would have to be a second one. Because if they make eye contact and they just leave, it's like, well, what's going to happen? You know what I mean?
It
But
kind of
the main
reminded
part
me.
of the movie would just be centered on these stray Jedi
Right.
surviving without the Order, but also without
Making-
causing harm to others. Like, if they did bounties and stuff like that, like, it would be like they wouldn't kill the bounty; they would bring them in alive.
That's what I like about it, because it's like even though they might have been disillusioned from the order and some of its teachings or whatever, they didn't want to compromise on all of their beliefs. So
Right.
they're like, they stayed true to themselves and what they believed in
Right.
enough to leave the order, but also like the not willing to compromise on the other things as well that they still agreed with about the order. So yeah, it was really cool. I
Thank
like
you.
that a lot.
Cool.
Yeah.
And maybe they could even influence Sean's hero character at the end. Maybe they'll kind of come together and come to a consensus of what's an acceptable way to use the Force, like putting Sith or Jedi aside, sort
Or-
of.
During your uprising, the mercenary Jedi go to try to intervene between
Right.
your strike against these Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
where my main character's friend is,
Right.
and he tries to stop
the
you
girl,
from killing her or the other Jedi,
Yeah,
and that's how my characters will end, or vice versa.
could be.
That would be kind of cool.
You know, the like Marvel series when they had like the
Assemble?
Defenders. You know, they had like the Daredevil series and
Right.
then the other ones, and then they ended up with the Defenders series where they were
Yeah.
together, something like
That
that.
would be cool. That'd be pretty
Or kind
awesome.
of like
Nice.
a Naruto and Sasuke fight at the end, where like you love both characters, you understand why they're fighting, but you don't really want to see either side
Right.
lose. Like that kind of.
What a crazy.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
That'd be fun.
We should get some funding. What are we gonna do?
Well, if anybody wants to,
If you guys have extra, just anything. No, I'm just kidding.
$2 million,
A couple mil.
let
I
us
mean,
know.
hey, send it to us.
We'll see what happens.
No, that's funny.
No,
But that was cool. That was good. I like that a lot. Well, I think that should do it for today. It was another good full episode of everything. Good game, or well,
Perfect.
kind of a game, just more of a
Yeah.
talking point, which
Yeah.
was cool. But it was good. So, all right. Well, thank you guys again for tuning in, whether it's on watching on YouTube or it's listening to us on your favorite podcast apps, going to work, at home, either way. We really do appreciate it. But if you don't mind stopping on by to YouTube, give us a like and a subscribe. And as always, may the laughs be with you.
Thanks. Goodbye.